Hello and welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel brothers. Tonight we'll be talking about how a father's chronic health conditions may be linked to pregnancy loss risk. We'll touch on how racism can affect a person's sexual health. And we will then finish off with a little talk about how the timing and intensity of oral sex may affect one's risk for oropharyngeal cancer. First up, I found this really interesting, and it's something that, it's a first for me. Fathers' chronic health conditions that are linked to pregnancy loss. There was a study that was just published a month and a half ago in the Journal of Reproductive Health, and it was a retrospective study. Which means they took all of the data that was available, all of the studies that were done before, and sort of gave it what we call a meta-analysis. They looked at pregnancies between 2009 and 2016. And they found that if a father-to-be has 3 or more medical conditions that part of what we refer to as metabolic syndrome, which is obesity, diabetes, hypertension or high blood pressure, or high cholesterol, then the risk of losing a pregnancy is 27%. Now, to put that in perspective, the normal pregnancy loss risk is 10%.
Wow.
So this is significantly higher. Investigators found that the more components of metabolic syndrome the father had, the higher the risk of the pregnancy loss. I find it a little bit mind-boggling.
Yeah. I think it's always been that when a couple finds out that they're with child, then immediately it's about mom's behavior.
Right.
And mom has to quit drinking, and mom has to quit smoking,
Right.
whatever else.
She has to eat
on.
right. She has to do right.
But I have heard of some of this research before that the man's sperm has a lot of effect on what is handed down.
Right, and even in terms of the placenta. Now, this was a part of this article as well. Now, they're saying that there's no human studies showing a lot of this stuff to date, and trying to figure out what could possibly be behind this. And there was a study that was published again earlier this year in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, where they looked at mules, which have horse mothers and donkey fathers, and what are called hinnies, which have horse fathers and donkey mothers. And investigators found that genes from the animal's fathers were predominant in the placenta.
Wow.
Right? Now, again, we don't have any similar human data, but that's pretty interesting. So what may be that, especially early on, and even the formation of the placenta, it is the sperm, it is the man's genetics that really may be helping to establish that foundation. Because this is an epigenetic kind of thing. So if the man has these metabolic issues, then it may affect the way those genes are expressed in developing this embryo. So really interesting. It really is. So it kind of, again, something that I used to joke around about years ago, that it's not just women that have to prepare for pregnancy.
Yeah.
If you're getting ready to be pregnant, guys, you need to get healthy. And that's way before this baby even comes, because your health may be a very significant determinant of whether or not that pregnancy makes it.
So, building on the long-standing reality of sexual health, that the majority of pregnancies are not intentional, maybe if we improved on that and people were more intentional about having children, that they would prepare for becoming pregnant, and that would include both mother and father.
Right.
Very good. Okay.
So,
our next piece is in commemoration of Black History Month, which we're honored to celebrate.
Right. I wish this was more of a celebration, or a celebratory piece, but...
Well, it is a reality that we should be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Racism and sexual health are very, very closely linked. right? And we know that discrimination based on race and ethnicity can have a number of results, especially talking about difficulty in accessing care, accessing treatment, accessing information, particularly among the group. We love our acronyms, we love our initials, right? The BIPOCs, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, especially women.
Well, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about disparities in access to COVID treatments and testing and vaccines.
Right up there with this.
Right?
Absolutely.
There are racial disparities throughout our entire healthcare system, and that would include our sexual health, which kind of sucks for everybody.
Yep. And in fact, I even heard this morning they just published new data that Blacks and African Americans, who represent about 14% of the population, when we look at COVID vaccinations, it's barely 3%.
That's atrocious.
So, I mean, this inequity in healthcare, it's not just sexual health, it is health across the board, especially for women, because there's also this additional issue of gendered racism. And we know that, women of color, even among their own communities, always have it tougher.
Yeah.
And really get the short shrift more often than not.
And medicine has not been kind.
No.
Over the years, and I think some of this still persists. These myths, like in our conversation on obstetrical violence a while back, these myths that Black women just naturally have a higher pain tolerance than white women, or Black skin is thicker than white skin, so they can take more abuse. I don't know where this stuff comes from. But,
I mean, it's amazing the biases so many healthcare professionals have.
Yeah.
Right, so it's another one of these things that we have to do something about getting over. People are people. It comes down to that. Very simple. All right, so again, unfortunately, this is reflected all too much in COVID in terms of people getting sick, even, not just getting infected, of course, but getting sick and getting sicker and dying in greater numbers for the same reason, lack of access to care. Right? So it all comes down to that same thing. All right. So again, that's something that hopefully, in honor of Black History Month, let's try to take this seriously.
Would be nice.
It would. And what is our final story?
Our final story is, I'm afraid, not very sexy, but important sexual health information. As Larry said in the intro, this piece is called Timing and Intensity of Oral Sex May Affect Risk of Oropharyngeal Cancer. That's cancer of the mouth and throat. And this is a study from the journal Cancer, from the American Cancer Society, that found that having more than 10 prior oral sex partners was associated with a 4.3 times greater likelihood of having HPV-related mouth and throat cancer. The study also showed that having oral sex at a younger age with more partners in a shorter time period,
what they call sexual intensity,
also associated with higher likelihoods. And the timing, intensity and timing. So they found that individuals who had older sex partners when they were young, and those with partners who had extramarital sex were more likely to have these HPV-related cancers.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, I mean, and there's some really interesting points in there about age, about exposure, but it also shows about numbers, right? Which, again, we've always known.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something just so intuitive about that. If somebody has more partners, their risk goes up.
Right. And I think especially with younger people having older partners, it's basically younger people that have more limited experience, generally speaking, are being with older people who have a lot more experience in terms of numbers of partners. So the risk of older people carrying HPV is much greater than it is in younger people, and that's how a lot of younger people are getting it. But we're seeing, I think, what's a little bit different. We've talked about HPV for a long time, but it's really looking at the cancer, the mouth and throat cancer. Those rates have been going up.
Yeah.
Right? And we're now at the point where we do have to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the HPV vaccines were introduced, and there were some fluctuation about the recommended ages. First, it was young kids, and the big debate was that parents make the decision to vaccinate their virgin kids who are not
Right.
sexually active
Right.
with a vaccine against an STD. And of course, the big fear: are we giving them permission to have sex? If they don't have to worry about HPV, like of all the
That's
things,
one of the greatest
all the things kids
stupidities.
don't worry about.
Right? If you're a parent, rest assured, your kid doesn't want your permission.
Yeah,
They're
and
not
then-
going to ask
and-
your
And
permission.
they're not thinking, "Oh, we want to have sex, but we might get HPV."
Right. Right.
No.
So, I got a vaccine. Now I'm free.
But-
No,
but
that's ridiculous.
Part of the thinking and like having it done before, I think eventually they said age 26 or 29, was that for the risk for a woman, the the tissue on her cervix gets tougher as she gets older.
Right. The
So a
integrity of the
younger
tissue
woman,
younger is different.
more susceptible.
Right.
I would think that stands to reason with this transmission as well, that younger people would be more susceptible, and that older people were more likely to have come across one of these viruses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can't say it's shocking news, just something to keep in mind.
Right.
I think the biggest big picture reminder is that oral sex is sex.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Yeah.
I still hear this way too often, this thinking that sex is intercourse and everything else is just fooling around. All the way back to our days in sexual and reproductive
That's right.
health. We used to talk about, I guess we need a new category because there seemed to be a lot of FATDs getting transmitted around.
That's
a lot
right.
Of
Not
fooling
STDs.
a lot of fooling around transmitted diseases.
Right.
Because we didn't have sex. We were just fooling around.
Right.
Yeah, well, you got chlamydia or HPV or herpes or any one of a number
Exactly.
of things that people can get from just fooling around.
Right.
And,
And another admonishment to parents, right? Especially if your kids are those kids that believe that oral sex is not sex and feel like they have license to do it however, whenever, how often they want to do it because they're still not having sex, that's on you.
Yeah.
Because you haven't talked to them. You haven't spoken to them and taught them. You haven't done your job as a parent. These things, these HPV, all of these kinds of, these are symptoms. These are not problems. These are symptoms.
Yeah.
We are the problem. We're not doing the job we're supposed to be doing in talking to kids and educating them about this stuff. So let's get it going.
Yeah.
And to bring this around to a close, we like to finish with a piece we call Poetic Justice. Right? This is where we like to honor hypocrites, right? Especially sexual hypocrites.
Yes.
Right? I think we have a good one this week. Who are we honoring this week?
Well, James Glosson, a 76-year-old former Boy Scout chaplain, was sentenced, a 76-year-old was sentenced to 40 years in prison for sexual abuse of 6 young men, including one who was developmentally disabled, according to the Rhode Island authorities that locked him up.
Right. And apparently he was doing this all through the 80s.
From 1980 to 2018, this guy volunteered and served as an assistant Catholic chaplain at the scouting camp in Hopkinton, Rhode Island.
Indeed.
So, this age-old hypocrisy.
Yeah, it really is.
There was no more homophobic and intolerant organization than the Boy Scouts. All of this, protecting the macho masculine ideals of running around in tight shorts and sashes in the woods with young boys.
Yeah. Now, and again, this is one of those things. Right? There are so many levels. He was basically supposed to be watching out for them. He was a chaplain. He was also, I think, affiliated with 2 Catholic parishes in Rhode Island as well. So he's supposed to be somebody that they were supposed to look up to and trust. And, let me tell you something. This is one of those where mea culpa doesn't wash it away. It does not. Redemption is not going to clear
How
you.
did he apologize?
Yeah, he apologized for his evil ways.
The devil made him do it.
Right. And again, this is a quote. It makes me sick to think of what I've done. You know, if you do it once, you can maybe say that. But if you've been doing it for 20 years, no.
He prays each day for
No.
God's help to help heal those that he hurt so badly and give them comfort for the shame he has caused.
Yeah. Again, if this is a one-off, maybe.
No.
But not if you've been doing this for
No.
20-something years. Actually, more than 20 years. From 1980 to 2018.
Well, that's the years he was volunteering. They don't say when the activity took place.
Okay.
But
Oh,
investigators...
yeah, during the 80s.
Yeah,
Okay.
investigators, they came
All right.
to their attention in 2019.
So, again, praying, for God's help to help those that you hurt, it doesn't take it away. You're a scumbag. Right? And because you are such a scumbag, we salute you as this week's Poetic Justice.
That'll do it for this week's Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers.
Stay well.